This is Alk Analysis.
This is Alk Analysis.
This is Alk Analysis.
What I don't know is why we haven't done a pre-recorded one of these at this point.
Is
Alk Analysis.
What
number are we at? We're like 40
This is
something.
not number 50. This is 50.
So, congratulations.
Yeah. It's confusing. It's funny because I'm like, I always think like this must be confusing for some people because we have the episode runs, which is like at 72 now, and then we have the AA runs that we're at 50 now. That's why I stopped numbering the bottle caps. I was like, I'm just gonna put bottle caps.
But that's even weirder. There's someone out there who's like, well, you actually have 13 BCs as opposed.
Yeah, to... I'm not numbering those. There's too many numbers. Too many numbers. It is what it is. Whatever. These are issues. We review comics here, so I put the numbers to make it like comic kind of. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm like drunk or something because I'm just going we.
We do a lot of things, but in this case, you decided we're adding numbers on specific episodes.
I made an executive decision.
That's fine. You can have the numbering. You're in charge of all Excel spreadsheets and numbering. Easy.
I just didn't want 3 numbers: episode numbers, BC numbers, AA numbers.
So, what total number are we on for episodes recorded between you and I?
100 and something.
Yeah.
We're getting close to 200.
Do we have plans for that?
We're getting close to 200. I don't know, but the 4 people that listen to us care.
They do. They want to hear more about Superman's death, and I'm all for it.
Still, that was our highest one. Still,
I think the secret was just titling it Superman's Death. Sheer curiosity.
That was pandemic times, though. That's when podcasts were ripe. Everybody wanted to
make them. They're still ripe. People haven't stopped listening to them. They just can't get as drunk as they could at home. They're still getting drunk at home. It's just
our advertising is so inconsistent.
Hey, so could you guys like and subscribe? Because we keep scratching our heads like, how come more people aren't listening to us? It's because we're not doing the bare minimum of saying, hey, like and subscribe. Let us know that you're alive out there and that you like what we're doing.
To be fair, that was Stat Boy's job.
Stat Boy had like a dangerous run, especially during the pandemic. Like that guy just fell off. Like he jumped off the deep end.
Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch.
I mean, Stat Boy, she. I don't like Doxson. They will return at some point. But yeah, this is not. No, I was gonna say this is not indicative of Coke and Dank tradition of us avoiding what we're supposed to be talking about.
No, in the meantime,
we are talking about the longest intro ever. I'm just gonna stretch this. I'm gonna get to like 20 minutes.
We are talking about.
Wait, before you say that, I think for the 2.
The title's right there. They know. Look, this is...
Yeah, we read a comic book
called Saga.
There we go.
Saga.
All right.
Volume 1, published by Image Comics in 2012, written by Canada's very own Brian K. Vaughan, and drawn by Fiona Staples. This was back in 2012. This was the comic to read. It probably still is today. But I know there's a big hiatus between 2018 and 2022, where he didn't write anything. But yeah, this was a huge deal when it came out. We're finally doing it. This is one of the most popular comics, I guess, contemporary comic books out there. I'm not sure what number they're at now. I think they're in the 60s. But this is the very first one. So this collects issues 1 to 6, right? So
yeah, I have. That's
where it all began.
You had an interesting remark where you said like one of the most popular contemporary comics out there, and I agree. But what do you attribute that to? Like when you first picked up this book, because you sent me this book to read, and we're finally talking about it. But.
So I just say popular as in, you know what I mean? I don't know if it's just people love this book. I don't necessarily love it, but I understand. Like I recognize what's good about it. It's very unique. So what they do right, they do really, really right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when we talk about the art of it, like, what do you think of the art?
Oh,
it looks fantastic, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it works with that. Sorry, I don't mean, I'm not trying to lead into you. I was just kind of use as an example. So what works here is this universe. This universe,
there we go,
is rare. It's special. And they kind of meld sci-fi and fantasy. Yeah, in this weird kind of space opera, which is, I've heard people say it's like, it's like the new Star Wars. It's not really that, but I understand the connections. It's something different. It's very
but
rare.
I can see the comparison. It's just a cheap compliment that you're giving them. Like, to what you're saying, this universe feels lived in. Like, whoever's writing it, we know who's writing it, Kayvon, understands everything that twists and turns and appears and jumps out. That when you're reading it, even though you don't fully follow all maybe the terms and kind of naming identities of different things, you have to keep reading to kind of follow and learn about it. So it's like a manual in that, but you never feel like you're being talked down to of like, oh, this pen is a wand because I just said it's a wand. Like, there's actually a weird name for everything that's weird, and you want to know more about that weird thing because it's showcased in a way that you have to keep following the narrative. So,
but at the same time, it's not too out there. Like the dialogue, I have mixed feelings on some of the things in this book. Dialogue being one of them, but they talk like we do. Like, they'll be like, "The fuck is your problem?" Right? Like, and it's like space opera. So I think that kind of helps ground how weird it is, because it's very weird. It's not in a bad way. It's in a good way.
Well, I mean, weird is weird, right? Like, that's subjective.
Fair enough. But I think the way they talk is kind of helps, like, making it kind of familiar at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Right, because when you look at it, like, one of the antagonists is a prince with a robe with like a TV screen for a head. Yeah. And that would be jarring, but it just makes sense in the world, especially the way that he gets introduced. So there's always something random that you're just like, huh. But like you were saying, the dialogue kind of falls through with, oh, this makes sense. Everybody understands what's going on here. The only one that's the outcast is the audience.
Yeah.
So we're not really being guided through, although they used an amazing trope to bring the audience in this first story, right? Like, we're kind of looking back, even though it's a present story, because we're hearing it from the viewpoint of Hazel.
Hazel, yes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And even trying to get to her name was kind of a fun, like, oh, you're not naming her this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very, you cannot take away how unique it is, how creative it is. It's almost like, it's like when you're a kid and you have all these ideas on how to make this and that, and you want to do this, that, like, somehow Brian and Fiona, like, put that together, like, they harnessed that, like, kid imagination and brought it to realism, and that's really, really cool about it. That's the best part about it, is the universe and the building, and just how different it is and how it all seems to work, even though there's ghosts, there's aliens, there's monsters, there's
there's
romance,
guns that can, like,
raunchiness.
Yeah, explode. There's swords that, like, need secrets in order to activate. And again, to what you were saying, it doesn't seem like and then. It seems like everything has a place and a purpose and an understanding. And even if they don't get to use it, it still belongs in this world, right? So there's a lot of care taken to the characters, especially considering how many characters kind of get sacrificed in this first run. So.
Yeah, now you read a little further than the 6 issues. I've only read, I've read this first 6 issues, like, back when it was new, and now I'm reading it again for the second time for this, and I've never gone past that. And I've never gone past that because, although this is a very popular book and I really appreciate what it's doing, it never grabbed me. And even the second time reading it, it did not grab me. This was a hard one to write about. This was a challenging one to write about because. Okay. I was just talking about how much I love the universe and how much I appreciate the creativity and everything. But at the same time, the plot and the dialogue are kind of mixed bag to me. Like we were talking about the dialogue, it helps ground us, but at the same time, it's some of the characters are a little cheesy. Like when we come off of when they're trying to be funny, you know what I mean? Like, okay, they're trying to be a little more menacing. Like, one of my favorite characters is actually Well, you said that Prince Robot the Fourth
Right.
because he seems the most like on point. I guess Marcus does too, or Marco does too, because Alana's like she jokes around a lot, and maybe that's her way of coping.
Well, she's just sarcastic, right? Like that.
Yeah,
you get her personality. Like, I'm surprised you didn't like I Will or
the Will. No, see that's who I have the biggest problem with actually is the Will. Whereas like this is a perfect example. I'm glad you brought that up because the Will, the bounty hunters in this world. This is one thing I love is the bounty hunters in the world all are called the something.
Okay, yeah,
that's really cool. The Will has his lion cat with him, which is like a giant cat who works as a lion cat. That's cool. That's new. Cool. That's whenever you're talking to the cat, it goes lying. Like, yeah, I think it's dope. But then there's like
the fact that he wants to go take a vacation on basically the sex planet of the universe. That's cool.
That's cool. But then it's like at the same time, it's like they have to. Once again, he's just the bounty hunter with a heart of gold, and it's like okay, like we've seen this before. What happened? The way they demonstrate that, I don't think was necessary.
That was fast and kind of forced. But we're supposed to like him.
We're supposed, but they're like
we don't know
that whole thing with because we can talk. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
He goes to the sex trade planet and then he gets offered like a 6-year-old girl as a
yeah, he walks to the planet and like there's strippers and like there's orgies, there's fairies. Like he walks down the stairs and like it's already like debauchery, kind of like people having sex everywhere.
That's cool. Everybody it's like a big orgy.
He's
like,
oh hey. And then he walks down kind of what would be the red light district and he has like different women and like aliens in the window and he's like not bad. And then he meets the dude who's like this is it. Like there's got to be more. And he's like I've got the perfect thing for you, right? So like any reader can kind of feel like, oh, here's where it gets nefarious, right? Like, if you didn't like sex at this level, then what lies beneath isn't going to be good. And as you were saying,
in my mind, I thought it was like people going to be eating each other or something, and like they're getting off to it, and then all of a sudden it's like a 6-year-old human girl, or what would we assume was human girl, and I'm just like, that was an odd choice.
Just dark.
Like it's very dark. Very dark, and I don't have a problem with the creators creating, right? This is the world that's lived in. They want you to know it's grimy in the grossest kind of way. But at the same time, it's like, listen, if you really want me to like him or like think that he's a good guy, you could just make me earn that, or make him earn that. You don't have to just go, there's one thing, and now he saves this girl from the sex trade, but then doesn't really. It's like, all right, that was an interesting.
Well,
choice.
Give him a purpose, right? Like this was long before the Mandalorian, but you can kind of see the whole Mandalorian thing happening there.
Yes, yeah, that's why I'm not trying to make comparisons to that because that's you're right. This is 10 years before or whenever that show debuted. This came out in 2012, right? But I just thought that was kind of weird. It's like, no, you have to like this guy. Here's why. It's like, well, okay, so we have a bounty hunter with a heart of gold. We've seen that before with Wolverine, with anybody who's kind of gruff but nice. Then you get the main story, which is Alana and Marco, which is basically a Romeo and Juliet story with a MacGuffin child. Everybody wants them dead, but they want the kid. And they're star-crossed lovers from different. Like I'm like, this is kind of, I don't know. This is stuff we've seen before. So
but that's the best part of this book, right? Like if you don't like the B storyline, that's fair. Like the bounty hunter and stuff. And again, that's going to be the slow burn. We're going to figure out what his whole kind of real motive and purpose is when it finally circles around. But the way that they introduce, it's Marco and
Elena or Alana. I don't know how to pronounce. I say Elena, but Alana works
because we just jump into their action as we think it's present time. But then the way that the artist kind of draws in Hazel's voice, it's kind of like whispers or like smoke screen. Like it breaks the mold of being in thought bubbles and actual conversation. It really seems more like Hazel's looking back on how she made it to where she is now. And I really dug that. Like that made me like the parents more, knowing that, because she kind of gives a little secret of like one of them doesn't make it, or like both of them don't make it to where I am in current day, right? So it seems like the book is trying to catch up to where Hazelyn is today, that you kind of see how far her parents had to go to get her here. Like I love that. Like that was great.
So so that's, like I said, I've only read the 60s, so I'm only talking about this arc. I want everybody listening to know that I'm not talking about the series.
Who cares? Again, we're never going to.
No, but I don't know.
And I'm only talking about the 6 right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I know that. I'm just making it clear because I just don't want you to think like, oh, I hate this. I don't hate it. I just none of this grabbed me. None of it.
it's but
except for the universe that we're lived in, right? So it's
sometimes it's worse if you, or like it's better if you did hate it, right? Like there's something there visceral or like
right.
that irked you to be like, this one thing right here, this character just ruined everything for me. The fact that you're like indifferent says more about not necessarily the comic book or just like what you like about comic books, right? So I think there's more there to like interpret and kind of talk about, because we've talked 30 minutes about comic books we hated, right? But this one you're kind of like, meh, and you've read it twice, and like typically I read it twice. This is one of the first books that we both read twice in the span of however long it took to read it. And for me, it gripped me even a little more just because I remember going back to this world. But for you, you're just like, this is not my world.
Yeah, it didn't. I don't know. It's weird because I like it. I appreciate it. I have fun with it. But then the stories and the characters aren't really grabbing me, except for Prince Robot. I think he's cool because he's trying to live his life, and he's the one getting dragged into this nonsense, and he's like, I don't want to do this, but he's got to hunt down this kid now. He has no idea who it is. Like, you know what I mean? I think that is actually the most interesting storyline, not Marco and Elena.
Technically, he's the most human of all the characters, right? Because you see him like when things don't work well, and he's like, "Fuck all of you," and when they do, he's like, "I'm the best."
And then his wife's like, "Yeah, I gotta, I'm pregnant, by the way, so you need to come home."
And that's a good scene too, because he's kind of like, he's like, he's not sure, like he's ready for that, but.
And like he's got his own flashes going on because he has a TV for a head, obviously, but he'll have like the TV will flash every once in a while. It'll show like what he's thinking or some sort of imagery, and once in a while it goes haywire. And I'm like, what? So, like the person next to him was like, "What was that?" He's like, "Nothing. Don't worry about it." And it's like I'm telling you, I find he's the most interesting character for me because, like you said, he seems the most real, but also the most ridiculous because the TV head. I don't know.
And he's royalty.
And he's royalty, but he doesn't act like he kind of does act like a.
No, he's a pompous asshole, but that kind of works for him, right? Like he's the one showing his scars.
Because he wants to get back to his life selfishly, but it's because he has a family coming. Like he has aspirations and desires, just like anybody else. It's just he's royalty, and he's got to clean up this mess that's happened between these two warring races, I guess, or planet. No, one's a planet, one's a moon. So I don't know. We'll just call them races.
Factions.
There you go. And one's more techie and one's more magic. Like this is stuff. This is what I'm saying. That sort of stuff we've seen before. Now, at the same time, even though I'm here seemingly bitching about things we've seen before, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like this storyline, like the Romeo and Juliet has been done to death. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just hasn't got to the part that's grabbed me yet. So I'm not done with this book. It didn't grab me. I want to keep reading because I want to know more and more. I've heard that it gets better as it goes, right? So this first 6 issues is not bad. And if you branch off to different characters and stuff, chances are I'm going to love it because I like the universe, right? It's just, I don't know. It's kind of like you said, indifferent. Yeah, where I can appreciate some things and I'm just kind of on others.
And in comparison to Prince Robot, like I Will is showing no emotion, right? Like even when he calls his ex, he's kind of like, "Hey man, I need a favor," and she's like, "Well, do you miss me?" And he's like, So about that favor, right? Like he seems to be someone that's holding all the cards close to his chest, whether or not that's planning down for the future. Again, this coming from Vaughn, and Vaughn, I don't know how this man writes the way he writes, but he always seems to have a long distance viewpoint to where his goal is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like Saga's basically at like 200 issues at this point, right? Maybe even more.
60. It's at 60s. They took a 4-year hiatus. They're at 60 issues. But they took a hiatus from 2018 to 2022. So, yeah, I don't know where. That's one thing that's about this book is that it's been a very slow rollout. Him and Fiona take their time with it. I don't think there's been any other artists or any other. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure it's just the two of them doing this whole thing themselves, and they'll do the 6 issues and then take like 6 months off, and then they'll do another arc and then they'll take some months off, and then they take 4 years off, right? So like I'm sure that wasn't planned. I think they probably took it off in 2018 and all of a sudden the pandemic happens. So they're kind of like, all right, let's just chill for a while, right? But it left for 4 years, came back, and it's still hot. What does that tell you? Like, this is a popular ass comic, and for good reason. I haven't seen it yet. It'd be interesting if we do, if when we do volume 2, that I'd be like, that's the, or it's got me now. I'm just to see when that's going to happen and how it's going to happen, because this first 6 did.
I was going to say, let's bring the other half in of why people keep coming back. The artwork is amazing,
Yes.
and seems to break its own mold and its own rules constantly with the way that characters are introduced and just the look of. Okay, so just the look alone, the character design is so imaginative. The fact that we're shortcutting it by just talking about the one dude with a TV head for a screen. Like, there's kind of spider women, there's like seahorses, there's everybody that's going on in that sex planet has like their own thing going on. Like the sun goddess, like she's got her own design. That alone is amazing. But in terms of like paneling, like they break the mold constantly, whether it's, I don't think they don't do the 9, right? Like it's usually like 4 or sometimes 2. But there've been scenes where
they didn't do the 9, yeah.
There's been scenes in where dialogue where seemingly a character kind of breaks through everything and like a splash of light will hit something, right? Because it's a very magical world, and I feel the art lends itself to how magical and fantasy based this world is. Like, things are glowing, ghosts are alive with half bodies and their guts still flowing out, right? But it's treated in such like a sensitivity that it's not jarring when you first see that girl. I can't remember her name, but it's just
the babysitter. What was her
name?
Isabella.
Isabella. That's just what it's like in this world, right? So every panel kind of has its own charm to it and uniqueness, because where they decide to put like the soft light and the hard hit is crazy. But just the line work on, like, I was looking at Alana's face, and like she has like sharp lines, and she's kind of treated hard, even though she's got to be soft. And compared to Marco, like Marco's more, I guess, jovial. I don't know if you can draw that jovial, but the way that he's drawn is slightly different, especially with his massive ram horns. You can see that the artist was definitely had an idea for how each character has to fit in this world. And the fact that Marco and Elena are, at this point, the 2 protagonists for Hazel, I love the way that they're always kind of framing her being Hazel in protection, right? Because they're trying to traverse, in the first 6 issues, they're just trying to traverse from point A to point B to get this girl off this planet. Like, we know it's dangerous here. How do we do this? They're always kind of sandwiching what we have to protect. You have to protect the package, right? So like, I appreciated the kind of parental smartness and awareness of like, you gotta like, the baby's gotta stay safe, right? And there's like little sweet moments where Hazel starts laughing, and you can see kind of the joy of the parents and her in the paneling, right? In the frame, in the page. So it's a beautifully drawn book that I could see someone coming back to, even if the story hadn't caught up yet. They're like, I just got to look at it because it's really, really like legit and unique in its own form.
It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous book. It really is. And I think, like I said, even in my current indifference, I was never bored. I was never like not enjoying it. I was just kind of like going through the motions, but it was always nice to look at. Even the spider, like that thing was crazy.
Yes.
The stock,
yes,
like the spider legs, and they're like, they were hands though, and I was like, and then there's like the romance, the romantic past between him and the will. That was
still drawn seductively, but still like a terror. Weird. Like, you're afraid, but you're still drawn to. So you can easily see how the will had a connection there. Like, there's those moments where I don't know how an artist knows how to do it, but they did it, and it comes across on the page louder than the words would.
And it's this weird book because it's strange in a way that it's like the art looks so good, but then everything about the story and what's going on is so grimy. There's a lot of dirt, a lot of darks, a lot of twisted things, but then there's like this beauty to it too. Like you're saying, the happiness when, like, they're lost in the woods. It's dark and dreary, and there's supposed to be like monsters in there, and then Hazel's laughing. So there's like the first intro when Elena's giving birth. Like, we're introduced to them as she's delivering Hazel. Right. And like he's happy, and he's holding Hazel as a baby, and there's all that like amniotic fluid and stuff that's just pouring off her. And then he's like, he's trying to bite the umbilical cord with his teeth because he doesn't want to use his sword. Like, there's cuteness and there's a beauty, or there's some sort of a charm there within everything being so gross.
Yeah. Like, so two things, right? You said cool. Graphic, and that's a perfect word, right? Like this book is very dirty and pulling no punches, right? Like you see Prince Robot having sex with his wife, and like they don't really sugarcoat anything, right? Like things are happening the way that things are happening. I feel Graphic is lending itself to, this is the world that we live in, and this is all normal for all of us. So once kind of you get over it, you just buy into how they're doing it. What we didn't talk about is how dark this book actually is. Like, this is a dark book. Like, we started off talking about kind of a sex trade, but that's just one corner of the universe. Like, every kind of surface you scratch, it's just, it seems like there's no hope, right? So it's interesting that they started with kind of this little baby of hope with Hazel, and again, using her as, I guess, the narrator, seemingly, based on at least this first arc, right? Because she's always saying, this is what my parents did to get me here, or this is how I met this person. But like, there's a rough adventure. I'm surprised any of them kind of made it through the way that they did, and they had to take like some shortcuts and kind of liberties, quote unquote, because it's dark, like dark shit, like fucked up shit is happening all over the place. You can't kind of escape.
They're very lucky that they met Isabella. I can't remember what her name. I think Isabel.
Babysitter.
They're really lucky they met her. Let's just say that. This is a book that's like, it's got like mirages and, like you said, ghosts with their entrails hanging out, and rocket ships that grow on trees. Like, it's weird.
It seems like there's no rules, but someone had to think of these.
But there are, though.
Someone had to think of these specific things in order to, like, the Will's agent is like a sea force, and like he has like a desk on a beach off, and they talk through bubbles. Like, it's so random that it's not random, because someone had to make all of these specific choices in order to get the story out. So charm is a good word for this book. It's charming.
Yeah, it is charming. Anything else you want to say about it?
I've been reading.
You've read past it already, right? A couple issues.
It's just the in-laws show up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, that's how the issue ends. It's like the Marco's parents show up, and then it's like, oh, and by the way, this is, that's how that's Hazel's narrating, like, that's how my grandparents got involved. I was like, that's kind of I don't know. To me, that was interesting. I was like, okay, I was like, I'm good here. Like, it's not a good cliffhanger to end
the arc
volume with, in my opinion. Now, I've never written a comic book, so I can't criticize these guys.
That's not completely true, but yes. You never finished completing the comic book, but
fair enough. But to me, it's kind of like, all right, well, you can't think of something a little better than that. Like, I don't know. But I'm going to read more just because this book is so acclaimed, and I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot of these, since I want to go back now that we've got so many arc analysis.
We said we go back and read things since we started.
Like a couple, like this one will be on the top of the list. Soul Gideon Falls, things like that, right? Like volume 2s. Because I remember what you said about the. We'll talk about that now. But
I will say it was a good call that you compared this story to Romeo and Juliet, because I feel with this next arc they're gonna look at kind of Romeo's family and his circumstances, and like that'll play a part on who Hazel is. I think just keep at the core that I guess Saga's about Hazel for now, but with a name like Saga, it could go to anybody, right? So
yeah, and go onward and outward. So we rate these on a good or bad basis. Boom for good, bah for bad, or whoosh for what did I just read? This is definitely not a whoosh, because this is very endearing stuff. How many whooshes have we used?
We used to whoosh
2?
a lot.
3?
More than 3.
Officially?
I keep thinking about that one robot one, which is the greatest one, where we figured out what whoosh was.
X-ray robot. Man, that was so funny, because that book started out so good, and then we're like, what is going? He just whooshes it. What do you whoosh? That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite
reviews.
Art analysis from us.
Yeah. Just dumps off the deep end.
We're like, what is going on?
A lot of random.
Even though through my indifference and everything, I definitely give this a boom. Like you were saying, even if you aren't crazy about the story and stuff, the world and the art and just how creative it all is, it's gonna get you through it. You're not gonna stop. Not that you're done this. If you're reading it as a trade, you're not gonna stop in the middle because it's like, oh, this is ridiculous. Unless you really are sensitive to the underage rape thing, which
it
there's
doesn't
nothing
happen,
wrong with.
But it's implied that it goes on in this universe. So
yeah, that and it comes in a left field, so I don't.
And early, that's like issue 3 that they go into sex world.
It's like
darkness everywhere.
Okay, so it's one of these books.
That's weird. I don't know if I believe that you're giving this a boom. I think you're giving it a boom for what it is. But would you yourself actually reread or like keep reading this book if we were going to review it?
Well, to answer your question. When it first came out, I only read this and stopped.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like
but I don't,
you should give it Saga, and then if it redeems itself in volume 2, then you're like, sweet.
See, I was. It's a soft either way, right? It's a soft bar. It's a soft boom. I was gonna go with boom because I didn't hate my time with it. I don't regret reading it. Do you know what I mean?
You read it twice. Do you feel? Did you like it better the second time?
I think so. I think I appreciate it more.
I don't know if I believe that. I'd say like that's a bar. I
appreciate it.
I'm
fine
to give this a bar so I can give it a boom.
I'll give it a strong.
No, I'm just saying though. Like, you know what you like reading, right?
Yeah.
And these are comic books, so people are gonna like what they like and like what they don't like. I know I know you appreciate the world and like what the book is, and again, the writer and the artist are amazing. But if you don't like the story, and that's usually the meat and potatoes of arc analysis. If this story sucks, it's a bop.
Yeah, I don't like the story so far. So there you go. I'll keep it simple, okay? Fine. I'll be
real.
Be real. Excuse me. I was gonna spit something there. And then
you should have went into your be real.
And then I burped. So I was gonna say be real. It doesn't matter what I was gonna say. It didn't say, but yeah. So there, fine. Ba for me.
Yeah. I'm gonna give this a whoosh.
Are you?
No. This is a boom. I've read this twice. I enjoyed it more the second time because I understood more of it, and then I kept reading because I was like, all right, where are we going with this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me at this point, the artwork is stronger than the story. Yeah. And that should be another thing that we kind of incorporate. If the story is stronger than the art is stronger than the story.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good angle. I'd like to talk to. I know, like for the past 49 of these, we kind of focus 90% on the story, which is fine. Yep. But we should scale that back. We got to appreciate the art too, because the art does carry some weight.
Yeah.
Imagine this book being ugly. I wouldn't have read it. I would have been like, nah, I'm good.
It would have made more sense to the universe. I kind of
it would have.
Like, this was.
I like the juxtaposition though. I love that. That kind of is beautiful, but it's gross. I like it. Kind of like my ex-wife.
Damn it! You beat me to the wife joke. It is just on a silver platter, but I'll never speak ill of Kitty because she'll come from my pants.
That's why I said ex-wife.
Kitty will come from my pants. Can't do that.
The brown pants?
I still have those. I'm rocking those. Those are vacation pants now. They're only appreciated abroad.
Abroad?
A brunette?